Good evening and welcome once again to Mr. Wickins Reads The Outlaw Varjak Paw by the wonderful S.F. Said, illustrated by Dave McKeen. And I am reading tonight chapter 12. And I need to inform you that the surprise this week is still on. We're still on for the surprise this week. I cannot wait. It's going to be brilliant. Right, some shout outs. Sidra in London, who started listening back in January, I think, to the first Varjak Paw that I read last lockdown, way back in November sometime. But you started listening to it in January. Hello, really glad that you're here, and I'm really glad that you're loving the story. It's a great story, isn't it? So many rich characters and description and settings, and the pace is so exciting. And also a massive shout out to Bryony and Miss Giltinan. I hope I said that right. Miss Giltinan, because Miss Giltinan is a teacher who introduced the first book to her class, and they absolutely loved it. And now Bryony is listening as well. So big shout out to Bryony, who's loving this one. And hopefully Miss Giltinan can hear this as well and introduce the second book to her class. So big shout out to you guys. Thank you very much for listening. Chapter 12. Back in the harbour, the morning sun shone down on the river. Ships' horns rang out as they came into the dock. Flags fluttered on their masts. Varjak and his friends walked down into the snowy yard. It felt like coming home. There were the excuse me. There were the brown buildings again, their windows lit with cosy glow. There were the street cats, most of them still sleeping. Mrs. Moggs sat by the ship's anchor. Old Buckley lay by her side. As soon as they saw Jess coming, they ran out to greet her. "My Jessie!" cried Mrs. Moggs. "They brought my Jessie back!" Her cry woke the yard. In moments, the street cats were up and buzzing, eyes aglow. "They did it! They did it!" Word went round like wildfire. "Varjak's brought our Jessie back!" Above, the seagulls rose high on the river breeze. "What happened, my dears?" said Mrs. Moggs, licking Jess, comforting her. They was about to rip my ears and tail off," breathed Jess. "I thought I was finished, but then Varjak rescued me." Old Buckley shook his head. How could he do that?" "He fights like nothing you've ever seen, Buckley. Bam, 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 pow, pow, pow. He's even better than Sally Bones." "Then I owe you an apology, Mr. Varjak Paw," said old Buckley. "I was wrong about you." His face broke out into the gladdest grin. Varjak felt so proud of that grin. "Well, it wasn't just me," he said. "It was all of us." "Varjak's got a gang now," said Jess. "Them two big cats, they're outlaws, but they're with us." "Pleased to meet you," said the horrible twins. Around them, snow was shimmering down from the sky, coating the yard in white. Varjak looked at Omar and Ozzy, and Holly and Tam, at Jess, and his skin tingled beneath his fur. "We've done it," he thought. "We've done the impossible." "We're so lucky to get there in time," said Holly. "If Sally Bones had been there." "You was clever going at dawn," said Mrs. Moggs. "Course she'll come back at us, you can depend on that. But we don't care, do we?" A defiant cheer rang round the yard. "Varjak told 'em," said Jess fiercely. "He told 'em we're the free cats and no one hurts a free cat." "The free cats, eh?" said old Buckley. "It's a good name. We've never had a name before." "It's time that changed," said Mrs. Moggs. "From now on, no one can march in here and take us away or steal our food. This'll be a free city for free cats." The free cats whooped. They started dancing in the snow, like these words they'd never dared to say aloud, but the words they'd held secretly in their hearts for the longest time. And the way they were looking at Varjak, especially Mrs. Moggs and Jess, his heart was dancing too, for it filled him with a rush of pride that swirled inside him like snowflakes in the dark. "Tonight, let's forget them and their laws," cried Mrs. Moggs. "Let's eat like proper cats again." And they did. Through the day, as Varjak and his friends rested, the three cats went out into the harbour, defying Sally Bones's law. They returned with heaps of food, more than they could eat. They found no patrols out there, no sign of Sally Bones's gang. "Huh, they're scared of Varjak," some cats said. "They're biding their time," others said. No one knew for sure, but as evening fell, there was a feast in the harbour yard greater than anyone could remember. The street cats sank their teeth into fresh fish from the river, the food they'd been denied for so long. There was a wild thrill in the air. The brown buildings were decked out with strings of coloured light strung between the windows. The snow was shimmering down, light and powder white, and up above the yard the stars were coming out. "Ha! This is ridiculous," said Holly, relishing the feast. "Oh, best food we've had all winter," said Omar. "Right, little brother?" said Ozzy, tucking into another juicy fish. Why do you call him little brother?" said Jess. "He's bigger than you." "Ah, he's younger," said Omar. "I'm the older twin. I have to look after him, don't I, Oz?" Ozzy smiled shyly, showing his gap-toothed grin. "Yup, I'd be lost without Omar telling me what to do all the time." Everyone laughed. "This is great," said Tam, licking her lips. "If only we had some mice for dessert." "We haven't seen a mouse all winter," said Omar. "You got to be a fearless hunter to find one of them." Tam grinned. "Oh, I saw one a few days ago, didn't I, Varjak? Fearless Tam the hunter, that's me." Varjak smiled and Holly rolled her eyes, but Omar looked impressed. "Would you come hunting with me, fearless Tam?" he said. Hunting? With you?" Her chocolate brown eyes widened with alarm. "But I'm not really fearless. I was just—" "Don't worry," said Omar. "I'm useless. Everyone's good at different things, right? Me, I can fight the best of them, but I never did get the hang of hunting." Tam giggled. "I'll bet you I'm worse." "Come on then, let's look for some dessert." They headed together out of the yard, Tam's bushy tail swinging proudly behind her. Ozzy started to follow them. "Now, you wait here, little brother," said Omar over his shoulder, eyes flashing. "I'll bring you something back." Ozzy blinked and stood there looking lost as his brother left the yard with Tam. "What are you standing there for?" said Jess, grabbing the giant. "There's food to eat for once." She dragged Ozzy off to feast with the three cats, leaving Varjak alone with Holly by the back wall. Above their heads, fire escapes zigzagged up to the rooftops and the open sky beyond. "Omar and Ozzy are funny, aren't they?" said Varjak. "I'm glad they're on our side. We wouldn't have made it without them." "It's not over yet," said Holly. "It's great that the three cats are so happy, but what's going to happen when Sally Bones finds out? I don't believe she's scared. Do you?" Varjak glanced over at the three cats celebrating in the snow. All they needed was for someone to stand up for them. "And I can do that," he told himself. "I can fight. My power's getting stronger all the time. Remember what Jess said. He's better than Sally Bones." He flexed his paws with determination. "We'll deal with that if we have to," he said. "The main thing is we save Jess. And if we could do that, well, maybe we could do anything." Holly gazed up at the sky. So did Varjak. Once again, he thought how magical the city seemed in the snow and the starlight. At that moment, Holly didn't look like the spiky cat he knew, a cat who'd seen too much of the world and had grown up all gravelly to protect herself. She looked like the kitten she must have been, full of mischief and tales and wild, wild dreams. "Do you really think so?" she whispered, like she was daring herself to believe it. Something lit up in Varjak then, something bright and warm that shone through the winter night. It felt like a string of light strung between two windows, linking them together. It felt like whiskers of starlight, fine and strong between them. "I think we can do anything we like," he said. "You and me." She smiled. "Well, there's no going back from here. You've started something big, and I'm with you all the way, whatever happens." She paused and looked down. "But who knows what's going to happen? we might not be together so much. Varjak felt those whiskers of starlight touching somewhere so deep inside it made him dizzy. I wouldn't, he started and stopped and tried again. Holly, I don't think any of this would make sense without you, he said. She nodded quietly. They spoke no more. There was no need. After a moment, she curled up beside him, placed a paw on top of his own, and closed her eyes as their tails twined together. Her breathing grew slow and steady. Her face looked so calm, so peaceful. He could feel her fur touching his back, touching his, black and white mixing into silver blue. Slowly his eyes closed and his breathing dropped to match her own. They lay there like that, close and comfortable, the starlight strong between them, until they fell asleep. And that's the end of chapter 12. Join me tomorrow night, 6:30, for chapter 13. And you know what's going to happen because Varjak is sleeping. Fantastic. All right then, team. I'll see you then. Good night.